Welcome to the Interzone Roadmap Pitstop January 2020 edition. This is the bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? This month, I talk with Nicole Woon, a program manager on the SharePoint engineering team focused on next steps experience for all site users. We'll talk with Nicole about what people can expect to see as suggestions based on what they're doing inside SharePoint sites. This also includes a new way to power your site with apps such as Planner and a group calendar, what we call Groupify. And of course, more on this when we chat with Nicole. Consider this the message center for everyone. We'll keep everyone informed, current, and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. Have your New Year's resolutions in hand, because here we go. First up, I want to share all of the new features that have rolled out for employee engagement. This is all of the technology that's being made available this month for the intelligent internet. The first feature is called SharePoint Page Version History. This feature will allow people who are able to edit SharePoint pages to access the version history by clicking into page details. Once you're into the page details, you'll have the option to see the differences that are highlighted between the current and previous version. You can also delete older versions, and probably the most important thing, you can restore from older versions. I like to think of this one as the Back to the Future without the DeLorean. Great Scott, that's a 1.21 gigawatts jolt to your SharePoint pages. That's right, Doc. Anyway, think about being able to go back in time and restore to where you were in a good instance on a SharePoint page. Next up is the ability to customize your search results pages for SharePoint sites. This feature gives tenant admins or SharePoint site owners who have specialized search needs the ability to build a custom search results page. You would build the custom page using open source search web parts from the SharePoint Patterns and Practices community or any custom web parts that are developed using the SharePoint framework. A few notes on the custom search results page. Only the modern navigation bar search box can display a custom search results page. SharePoint site owners will be able to customize a search results page on modern sites like group-connected team sites and communication sites. So if you want a little bit more control on your search results page, now's the time to dig in and make it happen. Next up is an awareness campaign for Microsoft Stream. The Office 365 video offering, which Stream is a replacement for, is being retired. The good news, Office 365 video customers in most regions are now able to migrate their video content to Microsoft Stream using the administration migration tool. Once there, Microsoft Stream, of course, builds on the best of Office 365 and now adds intelligence and some deeper integration throughout Office 365 like SharePoint, Yammer, Teams, the Office apps themselves, and more. Behind the scenes, the team has been busy improving the platform in preparation for Office 365 video migration. There's good documentation to learn how to begin your migration, and of course you can learn more details about the Office 365 video retirement plan in full. The last item in employee engagement is a really nice, handy one if you're working with images. You can now resize images within the image web part. We're giving you the ability to resize an image in the modern SharePoint experience. The key thing is the image web parts lets an editor insert an image on a page, whether from a SharePoint site uploaded from their computer or from an external web location. Once the image is chosen, you can then resize it in the context of the other content on the page. And the real important part is the image will still resize automatically with responsive flow across the various screens and devices that your end users would then consume and see these images. The ratio remains the same, and of course it sizes up and down depending on the device size and how the page in itself, all up, resizes to that device. So now that we have some employee engagement features under our belt of what's been released in January 2020, let's turn to talk to Program Manager Nicole Woon about all the things that they're doing to help understand what next steps you can take when you visit a site in SharePoint. So let's take a pause now and talk to Nicole Woon. Nicole is a program manager on the SharePoint team, and her focus is these days a lot on next steps in what people can do to get the most value out of their SharePoint site. But I know that's not the only thing that defines who you are. So before we get into the tech, Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? And I'll say welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. So I've been at Microsoft since 2015. I've jumped on a few different teams and joined the OneDrive and SharePoint team in 2018. It's been a great experience so far. I mainly focus on site and publishing features. And it's great to just communicate with customers, get their feedback, and really incorporate that into some of the features that we're building.
And I know this particular feature is highly driven by customer feedback and maybe is in that zone of I'm a little lost or I didn't know this could be done. So we'll get into that, the specifics. But before the technology, you have been involved in a program called the Society of Women Engineers. And this is since 2010. And we always frame it as since SharePoint Server 2010 has been released. But really since 2010, can you share more about what this program is and your involvement in it?
Yeah, so I've been involved in SWE since 2010. It's been an amazing experience. I started as a collegiate and I'm still greatly involved as a professional. Their mission is really around celebrating women in engineering in their careers, being able to identify various areas of diversity and inclusion, and really recognizing their accomplishments and achievements in the field. For me, as someone who was actually a bioengineer when I was in college, it was really cool to make that transition into the kind of tech industry and see examples of that.
Was it something that somebody had suggested to you, or you qualified and they reached out to you and said, you look like a perfect candidate?
In college, they have a bunch of clubs, and so I just walked past their club's activity fair booth, and so got to learn more. My job at Microsoft was actually through SWE. So,
oh, really?
I went to a SWE conference. They have those annually, and so I got a recruiter reached out to me, and
that's excellent.
That's how I got my role here.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then coming off of that, you not only got the job, but you stayed connected to SWE and a support mechanism already built in.
Absolutely.
Or now you are the support mechanism. That's really cool. And outside of Microsoft, I'd love to know when you go to different events or these specific events that are driven by SWE, who you're getting involved with and what maybe some of that means from a Microsoft perspective.
Yeah, so there are some folks that are involved in SWE that are from Microsoft. I've seen a lot in our local Pacific Northwest section, and it's really been neat in my own career in SWE to have grown from kind of that local section to more of the society level committees that stretch internationally and across the globe. Currently, I sit on the editorial board, so I help advise for SWE Magazine, which is sent out to members across the organization about 5 times each year. And so this involves giving ideas around the topics, around the theme for the issue, writing articles myself. And so that's been a really cool way to get involved. Right now, I'm also on the Collegiate Engagement Task Force. So that's trying to find ways to bring our collegiate members more exposure and more understanding about the society as a whole beyond just their intimate local section.
Cool. So I read that this is the 6th decade, that there are about 42,000 members. And you had mentioned content. So my next question about SWE is, what are some of these topics and how do you engage the content or the people? Typically, how are people coming across this content?
Yeah, so we have both virtual and in-person content. A lot of local sections will end up hosting monthly events. And so these could be anything from mixers to professional development panels to just general hangout sessions. And so that's been a neat way for people to engage in person. But there are tons of resources online. One of these, for example, is the Advanced Learning Center. And so there are a bunch of webinars that folks can take, whether it's about diversity and inclusion, leadership training, being able to build out their local SWE section. And so any kind of resource that you would need, you can go through there and check it out whenever you have the time available.
Awesome. Well, of course, we'll have more information about you as an individual, and we'll put links in the show notes for people to be able to learn more about the Society of Women Engineering and maybe get involved. So beyond SWE, certainly I know that probably is a good chunk of your time outside of Microsoft, but we'll turn inside. At Microsoft, how would you describe your broad focus on the SharePoint team and what you do? And then we'll talk about this feature next steps.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I work on site and publishing features, so anything that might be related with the authoring experience, people that are creating sites, and just making that process as seamless and as easy for folks as possible to accomplish the tasks.
So what makes it easier for them when people start to become aware of next steps? What is this new feature? And just to be clear to everybody, this is a feature of SharePoint in Microsoft 365. And at a SharePoint site in the upper right, you would see a loudspeaker, a megaphone. When somebody clicks on that megaphone, they see next steps. How would you describe the feature and what it offers when somebody clicks into it?
Yeah, so if you've created a SharePoint site for the first time, it's very likely that you aren't quite sure what different things you can do with that site. And so Next Steps offers that opportunity to actually be able to understand, hey, this is what could engage with my readers, with my authors, and with any audience that's coming to that site. So once you click on that megaphone icon, you'll see tips pop up. And so these can represent everything from uploading documents that everyone on your team site can engage and interact with. It can be posting news, and so publishing articles that help people understand what's going on in your particular space for that site, adding members, and then being able to groupify. So if your team site was not groupified yet, having the affordance to understand a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, and that particular one actually comes with a new experience. We've had this notion of bringing an Office 365 group to a SharePoint team site, which also brings in other applications like Planner and a shared calendar. So that notion has been there, but your team is making it, more visible because it's in a place where you know and you see the metrics that more people are clicking in the upper right than the lower right. But it also is just putting in that context of what would you like to do next, or what do we see other people doing next? And I think the other thing that I really like about the Next Steps feature is it's also personalized. If I see a next step, and I try it. I click on Post News, and then I go through the exercise of posting a first news article. As an end user, I won't see that again, right, in the next steps.
Exactly, and we've been looking at feedback from folks in terms of how many documents I might have uploaded for me to understand the process, how many news posts I've published, and so we're really looking to hear that feedback from folks and incorporate that into future versions.
Yeah, which I think makes it, not just a static feature that we're launching, like, hey, have you tried these 4 things? And then, yes, they try those 4 things. But the element of items not being there once they've tried them, or some threshold of everybody on the team doing some form of exercise. And then things, that are also planned in the future of additional cards to help people through. Can you put it all in context a little bit about now? There are the next steps for SharePoint, but also in context of the strategy or design for next steps throughout different applications, how you and your colleagues in other areas of Microsoft 365 think of these tips. And then after that, I want to ask you about the future a little bit.
Yeah, I think SharePoint in general is such an integral part of Microsoft 365. And so whenever we can find those partnerships with other teams and being able to incorporate that in so that it's as seamless an experience as possible, that's awesome for all of us. So, for example, you may have heard at Microsoft Ignite about Teamify and the ability to be able to create that environment where Teams is connected to your experiences. And so that will be maybe jumping the gun a little bit. But
oh, I know. It's we showed it at Ignite, really what the experience would be. But I think thinking in terms of what would somebody expect to come as a next steps tip. Once that feature is there, we encourage people, certainly. We push Microsoft Teams as a great way for people to get connected, to have conversations around the content. And in that real essence of it is it blends the content service of SharePoint in the conversation, so that blend of conversation and content. And I think it's just your job to bring that not only as a capability that the other teams are working on, but as a tip. Hey, you look like you qualify to add teams to your team site for a greater communication experience. So maybe we're not disclosing that there will be a future tip, but that capability certainly would be something that would fit into as a next step we hope people would take.
Exactly.
If you were to then look at the future of next steps, the last question I just wanted to get, mostly for clarity, when somebody goes in the upper right, there's a lot going on up there now. Mm-hmm. It's a place where I can go and click into my own profile and go and install Office. It's a place where I can go look up help content, next steps. How do you think about rationalizing the what could be a busy place in the upper right, but distinguishing what your team's offering, knowing that other teams are doing things to help customers, move along?
Right. Well, I really see Next Steps as kind of that first run experience. And so if I'm coming to a site for the first time and want to have that understanding of how to build it up, this is an awesome opportunity for that. We're looking into having it auto-open. And so if you come to a site for the first time, being able to actually see the tips right on your page without having to click anywhere else just gives you a kind of sense of what I can do. And then it's your choice to actually follow through and take whatever actions you need to. So we're constantly listening to how folks are interacting with it, other tips that might be helpful when they've been creating their own sites. And so if folks have feedback, we're always happy to hear and talk about it too.
Good. I like the concept around it's a first run experience, and a first run could be if a team site's been used for quite some time and a lot of people have done a couple of different tasks or activities, that may adjust over time. Mm-hmm. But that first run, tool tips, suggestions, it differentiates obviously from help where I might want to go proactively look up something about a feature or whatever. But I think it is a really nice combination of an offering to the end user. I feel stuck or I'm not quite sure what this does or doesn't do. Mm-hmm. And you're right there to help them.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in, talking next steps and next steps that are coming for the next steps, where people can go to find out more about SWE. Maybe you're active on Twitter or just where people can expect to learn more about next steps. Anything you want to shout out or give links to, and we can make sure to put them in the show notes?
Yeah. So if folks are interested in learning more about SWE, just go to SWE.org. There's great information there about the organization and details on how to become a member. So definitely look into that. And then with next steps, keep an eye out in that upper right corner for the megaphone. There's great resources in those tips. And then, of course, look on our tech community blog posts and any of our office.com support articles.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure to point everybody to that. And I can see now if I click the loudspeaker in this podcast, the tool tip that's coming up in next steps for me is to talk about teamwork features, all the other teamwork features that have released this month. So I'm going to click that. But before, thank you for coming in and thanks for sharing more about next steps.
Thank you for having me.
Now you know more about next steps. So our next step is to learn more about teamwork. And the first thing is just to reiterate what we talked about with Nicole and just to ground that SharePoint Team Sites Next Steps, it's a panel, is coming now into Office 365 SharePoint Team Sites. As you heard Nicole explain, we're expanding the in-product help that appears at the top right of your SharePoint team sites. You just click on the megaphone icon to see the tips from the Office 365 Suite header and at the top of the team site. The 4 tips you'll see, and you heard Nicole talk about, upload files, add members, post news, and add additional Office 365 group apps, all to help you move forward as a team and work out loud with confidence and awareness on how everything works and what you can do next. Next up, let's talk about email notifications for comments and @mentions in Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. Currently, when a user comments on a document, a presentation, or a spreadsheet and @mentions someone, that person would receive an email with a link to that comment. Clicking on the link, as you would expect, would bring that person to the document inside the document itself. With this update, when the person gets an email from an @mention or a reply to their comment, the email would now show the comment thread and the surrounding document context without requiring the person to open up the document. It all happens in the mail client, including the ability to reply to the comment without needing to open the document. A quick note to admins, this feature is on by default and can be adjusted via PowerShell. I've been using this, as I mentioned in a previous show, in the new Outlook Progressive Web app, in that new experience, and I will attest to both the ease of doing these actions and the simple edict that it improves my engagement when addressing questions and comments associated to documents, just due to it being super easy, and it's in the context of the mode that I'm in, the email triage. So no context switching, it's much more streamlined, and I am much more engaged in both what I was doing, email, providing an answer, and then right back to that next email without switching. Great new feature, I'll tell you from an end-user experience, and the way that they've designed it, it's really intuitive and certainly super helpful. Last for teamwork, I want to highlight a new docs.microsoft.com resource titled SharePoint Sites for Highly Regulated Data. I'll have the link in the show notes. And just to raise awareness that this helps provide guidance for users of Microsoft 365, specifically E3 and or E5, that offer cloud-based services so that you can create, store, secure, and manage your highly regulated data stored in files. The good part of this article is that it covers the collective value across compliant storage, how people manage access control, the ability to label files, DLP, and encryption. And it takes you through a journey in the last portion that presents it in 3 phases: the design, configure, and of course the focus of adoption once these features have been turned on and activated. Certainly worth a read if you have and manage highly regulated data. So let's move on to related technology. The first thing that I want to call out is that there are new features coming to the Office 365 app launcher and the related Office.com. A lot of what people see and can do in the Office 365 starts in the app launcher. Once in the app launcher, individuals can manage and pin their applications in the order and preferences that they have. Related to this is when they go to Office.com, they would see the most recently accessed applications. However, until now, the apps shown in the Office 365 app launcher and on Office.com may be different. With this change, users will see the same set of applications on Office.com that they see in the Office 365 app launcher, and by default, both will display all launched apps. This will certainly help with the consistency of your mental muscle memory when you launch apps, whether you do it through Office 365 app launcher or certainly if you do it from Office.com. And I know that you, of course, will always have your favorite app there, the SharePoint app, right? Always have SharePoint pinned there across all of the other great apps that you use. The next related tech certainly is something I believe you will have heard a lot about, and I just want to emphasize it here with a little context specific to OneDrive. Windows 7 is ending support, and how does that relate to Office 365 Pro Plus? As announced previously, Windows 7 is now out of support as of January 14th, 2020. And because Office 365 is governed by the Modern Lifecycle Policy, customers are required to stay current as per the servicing and system requirements for the product or service. This includes Office 365 Pro Plus on a Windows operating system that is currently in support. Using Office 365 Pro Plus or older, unsupported operating systems may cause performance and reliability issues over time. If your organization is using Office 365 Pro Plus on devices running Windows 7, we strongly recommend your organization to move those devices to Windows 10. We also recommend that organizations migrate to Windows 10 or supported operating systems in order to continue receiving new feature updates to Office 365 Pro Plus. Here's where the note on the intrazone's relation to OneDrive comes in handy. You can use OneDrive's feature called Known Folder Move to help back up and move files into Microsoft 365 as a step in your transition to Windows 10. Great offering for people managing their files as they're moving operating systems, but it's also a great way from a company perspective to get those desktops compliant, inclusive of the files that are natively on that desktop. The biggest thing that changes once you use Known Folder Move is those files move into the cloud, and that's where they become the primary source, even though, of course, you can use and sync them locally to your Windows 10 PC after the transition. For more information, I'll include a key support article for Windows 7 to Windows 10 and OneDrive's Known Folder Move, plus a helpful FAQ page. Next, let's see what's up for next month in the context of it being January 2020. These are resolutions. These are New Year teasers that peer into next month, February 2020. Resolution number 1, a new global reader experience for the SharePoint Admin Center. Think of this being able to delegate, but with only view-only access. Resolution number 2 really is for government customers that fall into the maker persona. SharePoint brings integrations with Power Automate and Power Apps to GCC tenants. So we've had this technology in the general corpus in the main production environment. It now comes to our government in its first steps to the GCC offering. That's it with the resolution teasers. We'll resolve to share a ton more with the full roadmap Pitstop February 2020 edition next month. With resources that we announced a lot above, certainly in talking with Nicole, we've added a list of important resource links in the show notes based on this month's innovation. These links and more will assist you in learning more about key help articles, information in the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, recent SharePoint and OneDrive community blogs, and of course, all things Twitter, all the places you need to get up to speed and stay ahead. We hope you've enjoyed this nice, smooth ride through the pit stop. Stay engaged and ask questions. We're here to help put our and your best change management foot forward. May your productivity kick off with greatness in 2020. Till next month, thanks for tuning in.